Hi everyone, welcome to today's tutorial. I'm going to be walking you through how to do a mail merge on Microsoft Word, and this will help you get your file set up and figure out your spacing for handwritten calligraphy envelopes. This is at least the process that I take. I'm very type A and I like to make sure that everything is measured correctly before I get started. By no means do you have to do this, but this is definitely what I do. So let's start with our Excel template. So if you're doing this for your wedding or you have a client who needs hand addressed envelopes, they're going to be sending you their addresses. I like to use Excel. Some people use Google Docs. It's completely up to you, whatever you want to do. I just find that Excel is the easiest to utilize in other places. So how I have my headers set up in the first row, I've got a column for the name, the address to, just in case there's an apartment or suite number, the city, state, zip code, and country if needed. I always tell my brides when I'm working with them that in this name column to make sure that it is written exactly how they want it on the envelope, because I will write exactly what is on this Excel sheet. So have them triple, quadruple check and make sure that everything is correct. Also, with addresses for wedding invitations specifically, you want to make sure that you spell out things like avenue, drive, apartment. It's more of a formal invitation, so it's best to spell those things out. Some brides won't care either way, but it's definitely something that you may want to mention before you get started to make sure that that's how they want it written. So we have our Excel template. I've already got it saved. So let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Word. Okay, so first we need to set up the page to the size of our envelope. My standard envelopes are size A7, which is about 5 1/4 by 7 1/4. So to do that, we'll go to Layout and we'll go to Size. And I didn't find that size on the list, so I just create my own. The width is 7 1/4 and height is 5 1/4. And we'll go ahead and click OK. So after that, you're going to want to go to mailings. Now, since you already have your Excel sheet created, you already have the recipients you want, you'll go to select recipients and you'll get a drop down. Since it's an existing list, you'll click use an existing list. Perfect. Then you're going to want to find your file. So mine is saved here under tutorials. And we've got our Excel template for tutorial. And we'll go ahead and click open. So on this Excel spreadsheet, I only have one workbook, so it'll be easy to figure out which workbook I need to add in. But if you have multiple workbooks, let's go back to Excel real quick. You're going to want to name it down here. You can say something like, you'll just double click that and you can say something like final addresses. And that way you'll know that's the workbook I need to pick once I get into Microsoft Word. You also want to leave this checked. First row of data contains column headers because it'll pull in your column headers for you. And we'll go ahead and click OK. Oh, whoops. I don't know what just happened. Interesting. Hold on one second. Use an existing list. Documents. Okay. Oh, when I changed the name, I had a little bit of an issue. So don't change the name of the workbook once you're already in it, or just get that error message like I just did. Perfect. So we've got the Excel list in there, and it looks like nothing has happened, but in fact, it has. So now you'll want to go to Match Fields. Now this is where it will match everything for you. So you'll see all of these things are not matched. So what's happening is from this Excel spreadsheet, it's pulling these column headers and matching it to these titles. So I always match the name. So if you don't want it matched, you just select the drop down and click not matched. For the name, I always match the first name. Address 1 and address 2 are already pulled in. City, state, and zip code are all there as well. Now for mine is a little bit different. You can keep it this way. but I'm going to unmatch zip code here, and I actually want the zip code to be where the country falls within the address. And I'll show you why in 1 second. So just make sure everything is matched. You don't have any of this other stuff typically, and click OK. Again, it looks like nothing happened, but things are happening behind the scenes. So after that's done, you'll want to click address block. And this is how the address is going to look when you're done. Of course, you can format it when we're all done, but this, you want to make sure that all of this looks correct. You've got the name on the first line, the address on the second line, the city and state, and then the reason I matched the zip code to the country is because I like to have the zip code underneath the city and state as opposed to next to it. So that's why I did that. If you have a bunch of different countries that you're doing for this particular job, then matching the zip code to zip code makes the most sense, and having it over here and then having the country down here. But again, that's completely up to you. So go ahead and click. Actually, you can also check the other addresses too and make sure they look right. So you'll see this one has the apartment there, so put it on a separate, because that's that address to line. So we'll click OK, and the address block is there. Perfect. So now this means that that address is going to be on the page like this, which is perfectly fine. So to finish, we'll go to Finish and Merge, and you're going to want to click Edit Individual Documents. This will show you each address on a separate page, which is what you want. And then you want all of your records. Unless you have specific ones you want to pick, you can do the from too, but I always do all and click OK. Perfect. So now you have your addresses all on a separate page. It's all set to A7. Now, obviously, when you're doing handwritten calligraphy, it's typically not in the top left-hand corner. So to edit everything and center it, you're going to click Control A, and that will select all of the envelopes. Obviously, you'll probably have more when you have a job, and you'll want to just click the center alignment. And then what I do, and again, this is just me, I like to do it this way. It's completely your preference, but I pick a font that looks the most similar to my handwriting, which is, I always use this Great Vibes font, and I size it up. I usually do about a 32. That typically seems to work. Oh, that one's a little bit big, so we'll do 30. And the entire address is there. There you go. So now for me, I also go to Layout, Margins, and I actually take out all of the margins, and I'll tell you why. I'm not printing these, so it doesn't really matter what I do. You'll get this error message. You can click Ignore, and then I just hit Enter. But I do that because I have this ruler up at the top. And this ruler will tell me, okay, at about an inch in on the envelope, I need to start my Mr. and Mrs. Brian Mikowski, and it should go to around 6 1/4. And that will help keep it as centered as possible. So all of these will apply in all of these addresses. Typically on addresses like this, I will say I move the zip code up because I like to keep it to 4 lines so it doesn't take up too much of the envelope. So you can hand edit those. There's few and far between for most weddings, so those you can do as you go. So that's how I set up my mail merge, and for the next part, I'll show you how I set up my ruler on the desk before I write my handwriting. So thanks for checking in on this. Okay, so next we're gonna measure out our envelope. And what I did is I grabbed some blue painter's tape, just like this. You can get it from Home Depot, Target, maybe even CVS has it. And I taped it to my desk. I use the blue painter's tape because it's not gonna ruin my desk. That's really the only reason why. There's really no other explanation for it. And then I have this handy dandy ruler that I used to measure my stomach with when I was trying to lose weight. Now that I'm pregnant, it doesn't really matter. Anywho, that's besides the point. So I match up the ruler to my envelope. And then I have my handy dandy Target Sharpie. And all I do is I'm just gonna put a little tick mark at the inch. This is the start. At 1 inch, 2, 3. Okay. So that way I know, I'm gonna put a little tick mark at the end of the envelope too. When I'm gonna start my envelopes, I'm going to line it up in between these 2 tick marks, which signifies the beginning and the ending of the envelope. And I know this first tick mark is 1 inch in. Most addresses and most names start at about 1 inch in. So I'll start my, just use this. I don't have any ink on this, but you'll get the idea. I'll start my lettering. Let's say I go down here. Say, okay, I'm gonna start my first M for Mr. here, and I start writing there. And then I make sure it kind of lines up. Now, obviously it's gonna be handwritten, so it's not gonna be 100% perfect, but this will at least provide a little bit less room for error. And I just think it's just an easy way to make sure that everything is set up the way you want it. Now you may be asking, how do I create straight lines? If I just have this set up with no pencil guides, I will link this in the video below. I use this Black & Decker laser level. I got it off of Amazon. You can probably get it at Home Depot or Target. And I just will set it up wherever I feel. You can also, I don't typically do this just because I don't find it necessary, but you can also measure here too. And you could say, I want the envelopes to all start at 3.5 inches up. And each line, you can tick off where each line will be. You can do that too. I don't prefer to do that, but it's completely up to you. So next I will show you an example of how I do this with a real address. Okay, so I've got my envelope lined up. I've got my laser level for the straight line. I have my nib with the ink on it. The nib I'm using is the Blue Pumpkin, and the ink is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, diluted with a little bit of water. So if you remember from the mail merge tutorial that we did, the Mr. and Mrs. of the name that I'm going to use, which is my husband's name, it started at the 1 inch mark. So I'm going to go to the 1 inch mark. I'm going to go down. I'm going to go a little bit prior to that. Make sure that I don't do my letters too big, because I did a test on the blue envelope I had earlier, and I wrote way too tall this way. So we ran out of a little bit of room over here. So I'm trying it again. And again, it's not going to be perfect every single time. It's handwritten, like I keep saying. So you just got to find what works best for you. This is why you always order extra envelopes, because human error is going to happen, and you want to make sure that you have enough envelopes left over just in case you do have moments where it's not centered at all and it really won't work. So hopefully I've given myself enough room. The first one is always the hardest to gauge how tall your letters need to go. Again, you can measure that out on Microsoft Word, but I like to get a feel for it because I want it to be consistent, but I don't need it to be perfect because it is, again, handwritten, and perfection should not be 100% expected. Close, but okay, almost done. I keep hitting my head on my camera, so I apologize if it's a little shaky.
Okay, and there you have it, Mr. and Mrs. Brian Mikowski. It is a little too far to the right for my liking, but there's a little too much space here, which is fine. I don't think anybody would notice. You can also do your writing a little bit smaller for longer names like this, but this is a really good starting point. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for stopping by.